Now let's speak to Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Richard Fuller, who joins us now. Very good morning to you, Mr. Fuller. And can we start by talking about President Trump and his tariffs? We've seen the threats on China, haven't we? We've seen the threats on Mexico. That's now going to be delayed for the next 30 days. But very much the threat of tariffs are over our heads at the moment. What do you make of Sir Keir Starmer choosing last night to dine in Brussels and discuss things like defence and security with the EU? Do you think he should be prioritising trade with the EU or prioritising trade with the US?
He should be prioritising British interests, and that was the point of Brexit 5 years ago, which is our leaders need to focus on what's in our best interest. If that's doing a trade deal with the United States, he should put his energies there. If it's about doing something in the EU that furthers our interests, then he should do that. Him popping over for dinner to the EU the same day as President Trump has himself said there's a difference between the UK and the EU about how the US will look at future trade relations doesn't send a good signal to President Trump.
Yeah, and I think also Trump's got to wake up to the fact that a lot of the food that he wants to import into this country, Richard, just is not acceptable to the industry. Like, you know, farmers don't want the hormones that are pumped into a lot of the animals in America, and the food industry, the restaurants and whatever, don't want it either. That's just a small example.
Exactly. There are lots of things where, you know, we can have agreement with the US, but there's some important points, like the ones you mentioned, Eamon, where there's a difference. And we need the Prime Minister to be able to negotiate those with the US administration. And I'm afraid, so far, the Prime Minister showed he's a very poor negotiator. He doesn't have the skills. And he's up against both the President Trump, who's a good negotiator. You can see that every day, even just today, with the changes that Mexico has made and the rollback of tariffs for Mexico because they got the point. With Sir Keir Starmer, we've got to ask ourselves, do we have someone in charge who has our nation's interests at his heart and who's a good negotiator to make sure those interests can get the best results for Britain?
Can I ask you about this YouGov poll out yesterday that put Reform UK top 25%, Labour 24%, your party in at third, 21% of the vote. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction mostly is about, at the moment, is about the local elections that are going on week after week, by-election after by-election. The Conservatives are winning seats off seats, gaining seats off Labour, gaining seats off the Liberal Democrats. Those polls where real votes are being counted, the ones that I probably focus my attention on, rather than opinion polls that seem to change week after week.
Are you taking the threat from Reform UK seriously? Because you're looking at these polls, you cannot solve a problem like Reform and Nigel Farage because whatever you've been doing so far clearly isn't working. Reform are coming out on top.
Well, the threat is that if small C Conservative-minded people who care about the future of their country, look at the mess that Labour is making of it in office, continue to split their votes between two parties, then we end up with another Labour government. And that's the problem, I think, for both parties, right? There's so much that people on Reform in the Conservative Party agree about. We don't want to make those differences part of the problem of continuing with this very socialist government.
What about Kemi Badenoch's net favourability in this poll, slipping to -29, below Farage on -27? Is that alarming to you that she's not even popular as a character or as personality, and Farage is beating her in that department as well into this poll?
Well, what I know as sort of leading Conservative in my area, and I'm sure for Kemi as the leading Conservative across the country, is people still haven't forgotten the period of time that we were office and some of the mistakes that we have made. Kemi's been clear that we did make mistakes and we need to learn from those, and that under her leadership we will set a new course. And it's early days on that, and I think as the people get to learn more about her views, learn more about her plans for the country, they'll start to say, yes, she's the person we need to sort out the mess that Labour's making.
What do we need, Richard, to sort out this knife crime situation? It's our lead story today about the murder at the school in Rotherham yesterday in Sheffield. Tell me, what do you have a view on this, or how it can be stopped?
Well, I mean, I lived in America for some time, and they had even worse instances of school shootings. And it's such a tragedy. It traumatizes local communities because parents then have to send their kids to school the very next day or the week after. And it's always going to be in the back of your mind, can it happen another time at that school or another local school? I just worry that we always think national government's got the answer, that somehow if we put some people in Whitehall to think about it, the answer will come. Actually, maybe we should just make sure that head teachers have that power. They know what's going on in their local school. They know where there may be a risk. Maybe we should give more power to people who are, on the front line, closer than expecting national policies to be the answer.
Why didn't you do more when you were in charge? Knife crime risen by a third since 2010, between 2010 and 2024. It became an epidemic under your watch.
Yeah, well, I mean, people move from different things, and there was a number of knife amnesties. I know just from my own area, just before the election, there was a large collection of knives. And in the end, we can't stop people owning a knife or to have some way of committing a crime. What you need to do for our children is to make sure that when they're in school settings, that the person who's in charge of that school, the head teacher, feels that she or he have the full authority and the full capacity to ensure that children are safe when they're there.
Shatter's Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Richard Fuller. We've got to leave it there, Richard. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.